Welcome to the Buddhistisches Tor Berlin podcast. Join us for live recordings from classes, insightful talks, and guided meditations.
So nice to see you all. I was just sat here thinking there's two people who are notably absent. So one of them is Tara Parliter, and the other one is Fabian. So Tara Parliter today is starting to lead this 3-month retreat for the men who have been ordained on the spring ordination course this year, of which Fabian is one. So they're both now at Padmaloka in the UK. They'll be there for 2 weeks, and then they'll go to Spain for a 3-month retreat there. So it's fantastic, isn't it, knowing that they're not here anymore and they're off doing that. And Fabian, last Saturday, some of you were here on Saturday evening last week, and we had a puja, so a devotional ritual in the shrine room, another big event like this one, lots of people. And Fabian ritually left the center. So Fabian, his name was up here on the floor in sand on a piece of cloth. And during the ritual, Fabian came up and made some offerings to the shrine, and then he left. And there were just the rest of us still here. And at the end of the ritual, Aryabandhu came up and he dissolved Fabian's name in the sand to signify, to symbolize that Fabian has gone. And someone will come back, but it won't be Fabian anymore. He'll have a new name, he'll have a Dharma name, and he'll be an order member. So the next time we see him, I'm not sure he'll be sat here doing this straight away. Might terrify him, but he'll be wearing one of these and he'll have a different name. So we ritually marked that. And we call it a going forth ritual, a going forth ceremony. So going forth is a traditional Buddhist term, comes from the Pali term pabajja, which translates into going forth. So the movement from one state to another. So we witnessed Fabian doing that. And it's been on my mind all week, the fact that he did that and seeing him do that. On the one hand, it was just really inspiring, seeing somebody take quite a decisive step in his life, a step that I'd taken myself, so I was reconnecting with my own inspiration for doing that. But also I found it challenging. It's quite challenging to watch somebody do that, to dissolve their sense of identity. So I imagine, even maybe as I'm talking, maybe some of you are kind of gulping, like, whoa, would I do that? So maybe it's challenging just to hear about it. And for me, it's not challenging in that way, because I did that. I've been through that. It was challenging for me in the sense of, okay, I did that 8 years ago. Is that still alive? Is that spirit of willingness to let go of things and not get attached to things? Is that spirit still alive in my life? So that's been my question this week. I think it is. So that's the kind of short answer. But yeah, that whole question has been on my mind all week. So I just want to share ideas. Like, I don't have any notes. I've got ideas, and hopefully I can just coherently string some of them together and see what you think of it. So this notion of going forth, it's not even an idea, is it? It's an action. So this action of going forth, as I said, it's very important within Buddhist tradition. And I think it's so important or emphasized so much because it's so easy not to do that. It's easy to settle for what we've got. It's easy to settle for the kind of status quo, not upset things. So it's easy to do that, to settle. There's a really great story from India that I think emphasizes this quite well, this tendency we have to settle down. So it's about this Indian woman who sells fish. And she sells fish in a market. Obviously it's way back in the villages. And each week she goes to the market with a basket of fish. Each day, actually, she goes with this basket of fish to sell them in the market. And one day she has a particularly good catch, so a big full basket of fish. And she goes to the market. And she's there all day. So people are buying the fish. She has so much of it that she's there all day. And by the time she finishes selling the fish, she realizes it's already dark. And she doesn't want to go back to the village where she comes from in the dark. So she starts looking around for somewhere to stay and to spend the night. And the place that she finds, someone very kindly offers her somewhere to stay. And this person is a flower seller. So there's a flower shop, and it's full of like beautiful flowers that smell amazing, all these sweet perfumes. So she decides she will spend the night in this flower shop. And at first she just loves it. You know, she lays there amidst all this colour and perfume and thinks, this is amazing. But then she struggles to fall asleep. And she's kind of tossing and turning. And then she starts to feel like it's too much. The sweet smell is too much. I can't sleep. It's annoying me. So what she does is she goes and gets the fish basket and she puts it near her face so that she can smell the smell of the fish. And then she falls asleep perfectly. So it's a good story, isn't it? It illustrates that we like the familiar. And anything that's unfamiliar, even if it's really beautiful, it's kind of strange for us and even a bit scary sometimes or annoying. We just want the fish basket back. So the story illustrates that human tendency, and I think Buddhism's very good at challenging that tendency in us. In all different kinds of ways, that will be challenged. So whether that's through teachings, specific versions of Buddhist teaching, or whether it's just through example, we get that challenge. So even the life of the Buddha, putting aside a particular emphasis on things, just looking at what he did with his life, challenges us in this way. So Lalita Ratna a couple of weeks ago gave a brilliant life of the Buddha. And if you remember, he talked about the very beginnings of the Buddha's quest, if you like. So the Buddha's decision to go forth, in a sense to do what Fabian did and dissolve a particular version of himself in order to find a more creative version, a better version. So we speak of the Buddha's going forth, and that gets described in all different kinds of ways. So sometimes very mythologically. So there's the story of the four sights, where the Buddha is living in a palace. His father has kept him inside the palace walls all of his life. He's been shielded from the more difficult aspects of human existence. And then he goes out in a chariot one day after the next, and he starts to see, first of all, old age, then sickness, then death, and eventually a holy person wandering. In other versions of the story, it's very kind of stripped back, much more, simple, but in my eyes, a bit more kind of emotionally raw. So there's one text in particular, the Arya Pariyesana Sutta, in which the Buddha's going forth. He just describes it as he was reasoning with himself. So he was thinking, he was reflecting, and he looked out on life, and he saw that all the things that we try to accumulate, all the things that we do, because they arise in dependence upon conditions, when the conditions cease, we can't hang on to those things. So it was like life slipping through his fingers. And he thought, there must be something else. It can't all be like this. Maybe there's something somewhere that isn't like that. And he called that the unconditioned, or nirvana. Maybe there's something more than what we immediately see. So reflecting like that, thinking like that, seeing like that, he decided to go forth. And going forth in the time of the Buddha meant leaving home. So he tells his parents that he's going to leave his home and they're really heartbroken. So the text describes that they were grief-stricken and tears pouring down their faces. It's very, like I say, emotionally raw. You can imagine it. But he has to do it. So he shaves off his beard, cuts off his hair, and instead of his normal clothes, he puts on a robe, just a few rags, and he walks out and he leaves. And he spends, well, the rest of his life, he spends living that kind of homeless, outdoor, wandering lifestyle. So that's where Buddhism begins. So if Fabian's going forth was challenging last week, that's really challenging, isn't it? The idea that Buddhism begins with somebody deciding to leave home and go off and just live outside with nothing, with a few rags and a bowl to beg for food with. So the Buddha describes in the text his kind of declaration or his proclamation. There's various things the Buddha said in his life which are described as being like lion's roars. So he just describes something in very vivid detail. And on this occasion he comes out with this phrase. He says, household life is cramped, a realm of dust, while the going forth is wide open, just like the air. So the household life is cramped and dusty, while the going forth is wide open, like the air. It's quite strong language, isn't it? So I have been challenged by that this week, because that's what came to mind when I was watching Fabian. The cramped and the dusty, and the open air in contrast. So what do we make of that? How do we relate to that? Is that what we should all do? Should we go off after the end of the Saturday class and take one of the IKEA bowls out of the cupboard and just go out into Berlin and live like that for the rest of our lives? I don't think we'd last very long. It'd be highly dangerous, wouldn't it, for a start? But also it might not work in terms of what it is we're trying to do and what we're trying to explore by coming here, and for those of you that consider yourselves Buddhist, by being Buddhist. So I've done experiments with this. So I've never done that. I've never just left home and lived a homeless life. I've never, apart from long retreats, I've never kind of lived more of an outdoor life. I'm quite comfortable in cities, actually, in a way. But I have experimented, so I've done little experiments. I'll just share one with you. I think it's worth having a personal story. We've got time. So a few years ago now, 5 years ago, I've been ordained for 8 years. And quite soon after my ordination, I moved to a retreat centre. So I was living in the countryside in England. And I was there for 6 years. And in the middle period of my time there, I decided to become what we call an anagarika. So if you've seen anybody with a gold ketsa around the neck, they've taken what we call the anagarika vow or precept. So anagarikas take a vow of celibacy, so no sex or sexual relationships. And there was a period in my life where I was inspired. So I've been inspired by this whole notion of just going, leaving everything behind, no possessions, complete freedom. So becoming an anagarika for me was an expression of that. Like, okay, I'm going to take this myth, I'm going to take this story, and I'm going to practice it as deeply as I can. And when you become an anagarika, you have another ceremony. We're good at rituals. And you take off the white kesa and you put it on the shrine. And then you take the gold kesa. But as well as the gold kesa, you also get given a traditional yellow robe. And you get the choice. It's like you can wear the kesa or you can wear the traditional robe. And on somebody's advice, they said, you should wear the robe just every now and again, see how it feels, see if it helps you connect with your inspiration. So I started to wear the robe just around the retreat center, just every now and again. And then one day I woke up, and in a fit of inspiration, I just thought, I'm going into the city in the robe. Yeah? I'm going to put the robe on, I'm going to do what the Buddha did and just go out into the city wearing the robe and show everyone, show the world that I'm a Buddhist. Because nobody knows, you see. We take these off at the end and then we go out and kind of anonymous. But I thought, no, today I'm doing it. I'm showing everybody. So I put on the robe and I went outside the retreat center. So it's a small village. And the bus comes down the road in the village. So I was waiting there. It's not even a bus stop. You just know where to stand because the bus is coming. And I was thinking, okay, when the bus comes and I'm going to get on the bus, everyone's going to see the robe and I'm going to show them that I'm a Buddhist. So the bus came and it pulled up and I stepped onto it and I looked down, nobody there. So I thought, okay. Then I went and I took a seat and we went round the corner and then the bus stopped for the first passenger to get on the bus. The first person who got on was an order member called Kama, who happens to live just down the road from the retreat center. So of course he got on the bus and he saw me and it was completely normal. He said, oh, hi Padmasambhava, and he sat down and we started chatting. So it was completely normal, basically. And then obviously more people got on the bus, but we were in conversation. But then I got to the city, and then it got real. Like, okay, this is happening now. I'm going to have to walk around in the yellow robe. And I got all kinds of different responses. So I would say the typical one was, I'm guessing this is a very kind of British response. So act normal. Anyone who saw me, it's like, oh, hi. Interacting in shops just as if nothing unusual is happening. He's just buying some coffee and I'm giving him the money. Another response was people smiling. So people did actually take an interest and sort of smile. Like, oh, he's Buddhist. Buddhists are nice people, so I can smile. It's not threatening. Then I got the other extreme, which was people being a bit unpleasant and kind of pointing to the friend and laughing, and one guy saying, oh, he's in a dress. That kind of, fancy dress. He's wearing a fancy dress. So I got all these different responses, but the one that I found most challenging, or in a way most beneficial, was going into an incense shop. I thought, okay, this is safe territory. They sell incense. So I went into the shop, and there was a guy in the shop, just another customer, and he immediately said, you're a Buddhist. And I said, okay, yes. That's what I was trying to do this morning, to show people this. He said, you're a Buddhist. And he said, you're a Theravadan monk, aren't you? And I said, no, actually, I'm a Tri Ratna order member. It's a different tradition. But yeah, this robe looks like it's from the Theravadan tradition. He said, you can't eat after 12 o'clock. I said, it's a bit different. Actually, we do eat after 12 o'clock. And he said, and you can't handle money, so you can't buy things in shops. And I thought, no, actually, I've got some money, and I just bought a coffee and I came on the bus. But it was really shocking that he had all these ideas already. So the robe was telling him, Buddhist, monk, this is what it means, this is how the person has to live. And he was just not seeing anything I said. It was like in one ear and out the other. So he was not sort of seeing me. So on the bus ride home, I was not intending to tell all this, but on the bus ride home, I remember just feeling a bit deflated. Like, So I showed the world, and now I feel somehow not part of the world or disconnected from people. So I realized that taking literally this example of the Buddha to just leave home, go out, put on a robe, it wasn't going to work. It was going to disconnect me from communicating with other people. So I didn't do it again. I haven't done it again. So it was interesting, that experience. Like I said, I was inspired, but also challenged. And I think that's what going forth is about. So I don't think we can take it literally in that sense. I mean, try it. If you want to try it, then of course do. But personally, I've come to the conclusion that taking it literally isn't an option for me. So does that mean then that I just ignore this aspect of Buddhism? Do I ignore the fact that Buddhism begins with the Buddha's decision to go forth, leave his house, and live outdoors? If I ignore that, then what else am I going to ignore? And to what extent is that just getting the fish basket back? And saying, okay, I like Buddhism, I'm sort of inspired by Buddhism, but not if it's too much. You know, there are certain things I'm going to leave over here and not look at, and I'll just choose the things that mean I don't have to change very much. That's the danger, that we take the bits of Buddhism that we like, that don't ask too much of us, and we leave the bits that we don't like and that might bring about changes that make us feel uncomfortable. So I'm not saying we have to adopt everything, but we have to be open to everything and take a kind of critical attitude towards it. So there must be something in it. What is there that is in it? And how do I use that to bring about meaningful change in my life and transformation? So another option then is to treat this metaphorically. So relate to the Buddha's decision to leave home, to relate to that as a metaphor. So to look at it metaphorically, we need to consider the images more that the Buddha evokes in that statement that household life is cramped, a realm of dust, whereas the going forth is wide open, just like the air. So let's do that. I'll just let you think about those images for a second. So the words in the text that get translated as cramped and dusty, they're interesting words. So cramped is a translation of, what is it now? Sambadha. So S-A-M-B-A-D-D-H-A, Sambadha. And that literally means something like bound together. So bound together. So the Buddha's saying that there's something about household life that is bound together. So I was reflecting on what household life was like for me growing up. And it was classic, like 2.4 children, as we'd say in English. So there was my mum, there was my dad, there was me and my brother. So quite small scale. I had grandparents living nearby, but no big extended family. But rewind like 2,500 years ago in ancient India, and I don't think it would have been that kind of minimalist. So we don't know much about the Buddha's family, but I'm imagining the typical household life in India 2,500 years ago was big family, possibly even like 20 people in the same space. All extended family. Even if you had a smaller family, it was a village-based life. Probably everyone in your family lived in the village that you came from. You would have had some connection with them. Everybody would have known everything about everybody in the village. So when the Buddha says that household life is cramped, he's saying that it was the lifestyle was completely bound together. Not just in terms of the proximity with people that we know, but in terms of obligation and expectation. So probably the main occupation would have been agricultural. There would have been expectations that it's passed on through the generations, the work is passed down through the generations, the work in the home is passed down. You play your part within that family and village unit. So to step outside of that is completely radical. All your sense of security and social security would have been bound up within that lifestyle choice in a way that I just don't think it's true for most of us in our culture. So for me, I left home, I've lived in retreat centres, become a Buddhist, moved to Germany, and fortunately my parents are kind of happy with that, but I don't think that's unusual. You know, people move around so much and do so many different things. It's kind of become the norm. So when the Buddha says household life is cramped, he's talking about something very closed, if you like, very tightly knit. Obviously there are advantages to that, which we may feel that we have lost, but that's another talk. So when he says cramped, that's what he's talking about. The word for dusty, that gets translated as dusty, is rajasa, which can also be translated as passion, but passion in a negative sense. So I think what the Buddha means by this is that the household life for him was a place where emotion could be easily stirred, negative emotion could be easily stirred. Imagine it, all those people around us, all the weight of expectation, easy to get frustrated, to get angry, to get sad, to get disappointed. So that closely knit context could bring up those kind of negative emotions. So it's cramped and it's dusty. So in terms of metaphor, because I don't think household life is like that per se, but in terms of metaphor, I take that to mean that the Buddha is critiquing living in a set of conditions that make us feel stuck. Yeah? So having conditions in our life that make us feel stuck, bound, not free. And conditions in our life that don't enable us to feel like we can express positive emotion. So conditions that breed or give rise to negative emotions in us or in other people. So the going forth, if we look at it like that, is a movement away from conditions that make us feel stuck and trapped and negative emotions being easily stirred, into something like he says, wide open. So it might not be a homeless life, but it might be that we can discover conditions or experience conditions that allow us to feel free, for that sense of air, of movement, of opportunities to express ourselves fully, positively. So I think the going forth we can approach in that kind of way. So that might mean that we do change the conditions. So it might be that there are conditions in our life, whatever that might be, things we do in terms of employment, in terms of our domestic life. There might be things that, in order to feel that we're growing and able to fully express ourselves, that need to be changed. Might be true. And it's worth bearing this in mind, I think. So Buddhism is about change and transformation. Like I said, we don't just want the familiar for the rest of our lives. There needs to be that element of moving into the unfamiliar. So things might need to change. So when I first discovered Buddhism, I had a career. Yeah. I had this whole path laid out ahead of me that I was expecting to, I'd spent years getting to the point where it was open, and I was going down that road. And it's not that there's anything wrong with career, but for me, I recognized, this is making me feel stuck. It got to a point, I was working at a university teaching history, and there was a day where I finished the day and I recognized that the highlight of my working day had been when that person rang me on the phone and got the wrong number. But I helped them find the right person to call. And that it's not that my teaching was like horrible, I really liked it. But there was something about it that felt constricting, containing. And this just simple act of, I know who you need to call, here's the extension, bye. That was kind of the highlight of the day. And I thought, there's something in that. Something's being communicated within that. So I had to change that. And I don't regret that. There have been other changes I've made that I probably do regret. Or things that I've changed, and that's been the right decision, and then I've realized that at another point, in order to keep growing, I need something more like what I had in the past. So this is the thing I think about going forth. It's not a one-off act. It's not that we go forth and then we've got the great conditions and then we just stay in them and that's that. It's we change, so the conditions we need change. So it might even look like we go around in circles a bit, that we move out of something into something else and then we go back. But that could be quite a positive sign that we're free and we're moving between the conditions. It might be that things change. It might be that actually the external conditions, the appearance of our life, doesn't change that much. But something changes, something inside, if you like, our relationship to those conditions changes. And I would say that needs to happen. There's no exception to that, in a way. So if we practice Buddhism, it is a path of total transformation. So even if things look the same externally, something else, something more has to be brought into those conditions and those relationships. So the best example from me is to do with my family life, interestingly, given the Buddha's experience. So the relationships with my family have changed. So it's not that I've left my mum and dad behind in Hull. In a sense, geographically I have. But I feel that the connection with them is strong and actually stronger for the sorry, I'm just getting a bit moved about it. But stronger for the fact that I've started to practice the Dharma and am willing to bring some attention to that situation. They were just here in Easter, my mum and dad, visiting me for the first time. And it was lovely. Like, we went out and I showed them the city and we ate nice food together. We had a nice time. But there were still challenges. I still find it challenging being my parents' son. And I'm sure they find it challenging that I am their son. Yeah. So it's easy the fish basket is our defined roles, isn't it? Son, mother, son, father, husband and wife. There are challenges that come with that. But there's opportunities as well. So I've had to, it brings something else for me. It's like, I have to practice. I have to bring what I understand about Buddhism into this relationship. What's the alternative? Just carry on in the same way and kind of never really connecting? No, I really want to bring something into those relationships. I feel like there's so much more I could say about that, but I'll carry on. So I want to introduce another, the point there is that things do have to change. But it might be that they change externally, it might be that they change internally, but change has to happen. It might be that both things have to change. That will depend on you and your circumstances. But if we stay true to that impulse to expand, to grow, to be inspired by that vision of something wide open, it will involve change. So it's not too late for some of you. For some of you it's too late. For some of you it's not. So it's your choice. It's your choice. But I want to bring in another image, another metaphor that I think helps bring out I think it helps bring out what we need to do, actually, or a way in which we can approach this kind of work, because it is work. So the image is of Plato's cave. Okay, so some of you know it because I saw your faces tell me. So the image of Plato's cave. So Plato, I think this is in the Republic, isn't it? Yes, okay, good. Some people are more philosophically attuned than me. So in the Republic, Plato describes a cave. And he says, imagine that there are a group of people in a cave or a kind of underground cavern. And they're sat at the back of the cave. It's dusty, it's cramped. I don't think he says that, but I'm adding that because of what we've talked about already. And behind them is the opening to the cave. So there's a chink of light coming into the cave from the opening behind them. But they can't see that. So not only are they at the back of the cave, they're chained up. So they have chains around the neck, chains around the feet. Behind them in the cave is a great fire. And the fire casts shadows against the back of the cave. So life is going on outside the cave. There are people passing the entrance, walking past, carrying things, talking to each other, shouting, laughing, singing. But they can't see any of that. All they see, because of the fire, is the shadows jumping around on the back of the cave. So they assume, well, all the noises that we can hear are being made by these shadow things on the back of the cave. And that's their reality. That's the life that they know. That is what is real. But then Plato says, one day, one of them, for some reason, decides, no, there must be something more than this. Manages to free themselves from the chain, so breaks off the collar and the foot chain. And they turn around. And you can imagine, can't you? They see there's a fire, and they've never seen that before. So it's like, wow, all these flames, all this heat. And then they see the chink of light. So they go towards the light, and they're staggering through the cave. And then they see that, the shadows, they were just the reflection of this stuff. And this is the reality, and that was just a delusion. But also Plato says it's probably going to be too much for them. So the light's just too blinding. So maybe they go back into the cave for a while, back to the fish basket. Yeah? So maybe they do that. Or maybe they have to work differently. So they can't see because it's too bright out there. Maybe they have to look in a pool of water and see the reflections in the water for a while. And after that, maybe they have to wait till the dark has come. And they can look at things in the moonlight and under the stars. And then gradually, they get more and more accustomed to the reality and the light that comes and seeing everything as it is. So it's not a million miles away from what the Buddha says, is it? And this whole notion of going forth, breaking free. So I think that's what I like about this image, is that it's a breaking free. Going forth, we could say, is about breaking free from the things that keep us trapped in a delusion, breaking out of that so that we can move towards an increasingly real perception of what's going on. The other thing I like about the image of Plato's cave is these chains. So it's another image for us, isn't it? Another metaphor. What are the things that keep us chained and trapped? Buddhism has a lot to say about this. One of the teachings that the Buddha gave was on what are known as the 10 fetters. So fetters are chains, things that bind us, things that keep us bound. So the Buddha spoke of 10 of these. I'm just going to speak about the first 3. Because in fact the first 3, he says, are the most important. If you break the first 3, you're what is known as irreversible on the path. So if you break the first 3, you're going to get out the cave. It's guaranteed. If you haven't done that, you might see some light, but you're going to come back into the cave, back to the fish basket. So the first 3 are all important. So the first 3 are fixed self-view, sakkaya drishti, sila vrata paramarsha, which is dependency upon rites and rituals as ends in themselves. I'll unpack this a little bit more. And the third one is doubt, vicikitsa, doubt. Yeah? So fixed self-view, a dependence on rites and rituals as ends in themselves, and doubt. When Sangharakshita talked about these first 3 fetters, he translated them into more simple language, which I think is really helpful. So fixed self-view, he said, was habit. So we have all these habits that we kind of are a habit, aren't we? In a sense, we've got this bundle of habits, and we call that Padmasagara. We put a name to that, but we have all these habits, and that keeps us fixed. So fixed self-view. It's classic, isn't it, with things like labels. So there are certain labels I have about myself, which there's a kind of reflection. There's some element of truth in that. So I'm English, for a start. I'm more conscious of that these days, now that I live in Germany. But okay, I'm English. And that's true to some extent. I was born there. But it's easy to allow that to define me. Or I'm heterosexual, another example. And it's not that these things are not true, but if I'm not careful, I start to over-identify with them. In the past, I was the great historian working at the university who didn't have time to answer the phone when people rang and wanted an extension because, I was too important. I had other things to teach people and dispense to them. It happens with Buddhism too, so I'm a Buddhist. But if I'm not careful, I end up back in the shop with the guy, like, I'm a Buddhist, so I only do this and I don't do that. Yeah? So even Buddhism we can turn into a kind of identity. And that might be really helpful, it might be really positive to identify with something. If we over-identify, it becomes a fetter. Because then we stop seeing our capacity to change, our capacity to express something new, something different. All of us in this room have the potential to do amazing things that we haven't even thought of yet. Yeah, we haven't even had the idea, let alone done it. All of us have that capacity, but we need to somehow break up those over-identifications with being a particular shape. So even something like meditation, it's easy to slip into, I'm not a very good meditator. Yeah. What's the evidence of that? So you've got an idea of meditation and what a good meditation is. Probably it's something to do with not having any distraction and for the mind to be completely still. But maybe that's not what a good meditation is. Maybe a good meditation is to do with your relationship to the distractions and how you work with them. Can you work creatively with that? So maybe you're a really good meditator, and maybe you could be a fantastic, brilliant one, but we don't know what that looks like yet. So the antidote, if you like, to the first fetter of fixed self-view is creativity. So always looking for new ways of doing things, being creative with yourself and your relationships to things. So for example, when my parents came, we had our moments. So my tendency when I'm with them is to sort of just withdraw a bit and get really quiet. And it's like, I don't make the conversation. I even slump a bit probably, like teenager. Yeah. I just can't think of anything to say, so I'll just sort of sit here. And I realised, no, that's not good enough, come on. And I managed to find a creative way, which actually involved talking about myself, which you might be surprised, I don't sort of do a lot. When I'm sat here, I like to talk about myself, but I'm not the person who volunteers necessarily a lot of information about myself. You might disagree, which you're perfectly at liberty to do, but I don't think that I am. Anyway, maybe that's a view. So I managed to find a creative way to stimulate some conversation. So there are loads of ways that we can do that. The second fetter is observance of rites and rituals as ends in themselves, or dependence on them as rites in themselves. Cutting through all the complexity of that translation. Sangharakshita just says the second fetter is superficiality. So it's when we do things, but half-heartedly, in a superficial way. So again, it can creep into our practice of Buddhism. So we come into the shrine and out of habit, we bow. Those of us who do that kind of thing, or we salute the shrine, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya. But are we aware of what we're doing? Are we just going through the motions? And this applies to all areas of our lives. So it might be that there are times where we're just repetitive, doing things, but not very wholeheartedly. So it might be going back to our conditions in our lives, that we don't have the conditions to meditate for 2 hours a day. Yeah, I don't have the conditions to meditate for 2 hours a day. It might be that we have the conditions to meditate for 20 minutes every day, or every other day. Maybe you could make time for that. But if you do, whenever you do something, can we do it wholeheartedly? Yeah? So the antidote to the fetter of superficiality is commitment. So when we do something, can we, even just for a short time, can we fully commit to that and be wholehearted in it? And then the last one is the fetter of doubt. So having all the kind of thoughts flying around, should I do this, or would it be better if I do this? Sangharakshita called this vagueness, being vague. So it's perfectly normal, isn't it, to make decisions and have to think about things and weigh things up. But sometimes we can get to a point where we just keep going round in circles as a way of sort of avoiding making a decision. So it makes us avoid the commitment, which makes it harder for us to be creative. So the antidote is to be clear. So can we be more clear, like what do we really want from our lives? Is Buddhism helpful in that? Just be clear, like is coming to this center helpful? Is it going to another center? So we have the field of options, but then we need to make choices and make commitments. So can we get clear? And I think I've been very much benefited in this by other people. So it's hard sometimes, isn't it, to get clear for oneself, because we have the habits and a particular way of looking at things, a particular way of looking at ourselves. Other people can often offer a very fresh, welcome perspective that helps us to get clear. That's why I think Sangha is so important. So we're really lucky here that there's so many people, like so many good people come every Saturday morning who are interested in life. Yeah? Just to put it simply, they're interested in what life has to offer and how to make the most of life. And we can talk to each other. And some people have got more experience at doing that than others have, or have thought about it in different ways. to others, and we can connect with that. And that's amazing. It can help us bring clarity, it can help us make commitments, and it can help us really change in a radical sense. So just going back to Fabian, like, look at him. He's off now in the mountains for 3 months. Not so long ago, maybe 3 or 4 years, I guess 4 years, he came here for the first time. And I wasn't around then, so I don't know what he was like, but I'm guessing he was a bit less clear. Let's be polite about it. A bit less clear, not quite sure what he was committed to, and probably a bit more limited in himself. I've known him long enough to see him become more creative, obviously more committed given what he's doing, and more clear. So it's a real joy to see people breaking. I'm not going to say he's broken the fetters and become irreversible, but breaking out of that which is cramped, that which is dusty, and moving more and more towards something that's wide open and like the air. So that's an option for all of us if we choose it.